Welcome to the latest edition of From the Coach's Office, brought to you by the Varsity Voices Media Network. I'm Dan Frevaletti, here with my co-host Joe Frevaletti, and we are lucky to be joined by the current head coach of the Elmhurst University Blue Jays, head coach Mike Heffernan. Coach Heffernan, thanks for joining us.
Appreciate you guys having me.
You know, I'm a little outnumbered today, so with not only one, but two legendary Elmhurst Blue Jay defensive linemen on the podcast. So for those of you who don't know, Joe is an Elmhurst legend from back in the day. Coach Heffernan, a younger, newer, better version of a defensive lineman.
I did not say
more recent version at Elmhurst from the early 2000s. So, Coach, tell us, how's everything in Blue Jay Nation?
It's great. It's always great here in Elmhurst, and it's fantastic to be back. I can't say it enough. So everything's really great.
Good. And for listeners who may not know the Elmhurst program, Coach, what makes Elmhurst University and the CCIW conference a unique place to play football?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have enough time for me to go on about the institution, the community, and all that, but
all the time you need, Coach.
Yeah, university, who and what Elmhurst University is hands down number one, the people. And I'm doing what I'm doing today, and I am who I am as a husband, a father, a man, because of my experience at Elmhurst University. And being able to, I've coached college football for over 20 years now, and to be able to tell that story at the place that actually did that for me is extremely, extremely rewarding. But that's what makes Elmhurst University what it is, and that's important.
And are you in your second year, Coach?
Just year one, about 2 weeks ago.
Year one, 2 weeks ago. All right. So I know you've got a lot of things going on. You're trying to build certain things. How would you describe the culture you're trying to build within the Elmhurst football program?
Yeah, to sum it up, the best way is anybody that is going to be a part of this program, from facilities that takes care of this building at night, to myself, the head coach, and the players involved, and the alums and everybody else, is we are a part of something bigger than ourselves. And that could be summed up as my inner circle is their inner circle is my inner circle, but we are here together, and we have the same mission, the same goals moving forward. Pillar one of our program is protect the program. And the exact definition of protect the program is, you want to get your degree from Elmhurst University, you want to play football here, you are now a part of something bigger than yourself. And it's number one for a reason.
Coach, we typically talk Chicago Catholic League and high school football, and we've talked to coaches. One of the things that really kind of prompted us to give you a call and see if you'd come on was that we talk a lot about what's happening now on the FBS and FCS levels of college football, and how the both NIL, transfer portals, things of that nature have led to what we call the squeeze, where there's not as many players getting offered scholarships. Those teams are getting older from an age perspective as well. How, if at all, has that impacted your job at Elmhurst at the Division III level?
Yeah, it's impacted it some. I haven't been here long enough to go through some of it yet, but even at my previous spot, which was a Division III institution as the head coach, for us, you do see more abundance of better high school talent that is available for us to recruit, and guys that are around that normally, 5 years ago, you'd be like, oh, there's no shot, there's no way, But you have an opportunity to recruit those guys, and which is great. At the same time, it's a matter of time before the things at the top trickle down, like everything does. And I hope that some things can be figured out before it really starts affecting all levels of football. I obviously I'm totally biased, but I think high school's affected to a degree, especially down south, because there's some different rules and things that are changing in Florida and stuff like that for high school student athletes, where I think one of the purest forms of football that's still left is Division III football, and that's a big piece of why I love it, right? So
yeah, and a lot of players, Coach, think they need to be the stars on their team, right, to play college football. What kinds of players do you think actually succeed at the Division III level?
Yeah, It's from top to bottom, all different scenarios, all different situations. You all know, or any middle-aged male knows that, a kid can be a senior in high school and be a whole lot different 2 years later just because of when they hit, puberty, or when they start going through, their big time, physically maturing time. So, a lot can happen. You got guys from, that transfer down, like myself. I played at Illinois State and ended up transferring and found myself at a intimate institution like Elmhurst. So, and then you got guys that may have been backups, or they may have been special teams guys that found their way onto Division III rosters, and then they just continue to chip away and earn their spots. But the biggest thing is that if you're committed and you're willing to sacrifice and you're willing to put the time in and willing to put the work in, you're going to have a role, and that role is not defined after one season or one off season, right? Like that is a continuous nonstop. And there's all state guys, there's all conference guys, there's all region guys in the team, but there's also guys that were journeymen, as you can say, or guys that maybe they started, maybe they didn't start, that didn't get accolades as somebody else. It's still college football. You still got to work, right? But you got to start somewhere, and there's opportunity for everybody.
Coach, along those lines, every player who watches and grows up playing football, whether youth and high school, think at some point, especially in this area, they want to play in the Big Ten or they want to play at Notre Dame. Whose job is it to let that player know that might not be where they would have the best experience? Is it anyone's job? Is it the process that kind of tells them what the next step is for them? Or would you like it to be someone who says, hey, why don't you consider other options rather than what you're thinking you're at? Maybe you're not where you think you should be, or this is a better route for you in particular.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm not a high school coach, and one of the reasons is because that's a really tough spot to be, right? I've heard coaches say, like, well, you're not a Division I guy, or you're not a Division II guy, and that guy all of a sudden is a Division I guy or is a Division II guy,
right?
And that doesn't come from a spiteful place by the head coach is just trying to help the young man figure his way out. Because just perfect example is a head coach wanting to have guys talk to Division III coaches, Division II coaches, even though the young man might have the possibility of being a Division I guy. The coach only wants to open up doors and keep doors open that are going to present great opportunities, right? So I've coached scholarship level, I've recruited scholarship guys, and sometimes those guys, and I've coached non-scholarship level like I do now, and there's guys that had scholarship opportunities that decided to go this route because it best fit their academic goals, it best fit their life goals. So there's so much in between. I don't know if it's anybody's role or anybody's job, but there certainly has to be a balance of what's your dream, what's your goal, and then at some point, when does reality set in? And this is a very touchy point because of the portal and the way the dynamics are, and the way the world of college and high school athletics are right now, and not in a bad way. It's just different. This is just what it is now. Parents could, right, and hopefully should play a large role in helping steer that, but that's for them to figure out. And sometimes you figure out the hard way, or something comes to light because, hey, it's the end of my junior year and I'm not visiting Alabama, and I thought I was the starting middle linebacker at Alabama. So I think it's a combination of things. I don't think it's just one thing. But at the end of the day, if the people that surround the young person have the young person's best intentions, he'll be directed in where he or she needs to go. I truly believe that. But that comes from culture, that comes from high school culture, that comes from and there's a lot of that is a little bit of a gray area these days, right? Because of social media and things like that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of adjustments, and you just mentioned a couple of them there, but what do you think is the biggest adjustment for some of these high school players, what they face when they arrive on campus at the college level?
Probably number one, time management, right? Because it's all new. It's the, what I like to say to guys is look, we don't have scholarships, right? Wish I did, but we don't. So what you choose to do with the majority of your free time is play college football. And that's here at Elmhurst University. So all that video game time, all that, you'll find time to do that, but what you choose to do with your majority of that free time is football. And that's a big commitment when you hear about it that way, instead of it's just something I do, right? Or so, I think time management's the biggest piece. And then, especially at our level, the commitment that people don't realize Division III is. Whether you're a Division III athlete or Division I athlete, you love it all the same, right? And there's very few tweaks and things that are allowed or not allowed, but a lot of it's very similar. And our guys work just as hard as the scholarship athletes that I coached at one time, right? Or guys that I played with. So, I think that can be a shocker is the competitiveness and the level at which there's a demand that you're going to go to school, you're going to get your degree first and foremost, but what you choose to do with that free time, a lot of it's football. I think that's the biggest adjustment and biggest time management piece is hey, preseason camp is no joke for the amount of days that the NCAA allows you to have. It doesn't matter if you're playing in the Big Ten or you're playing the CCIW, right? It is, we tell you when to wake up, we tell you when to eat, we tell you when to meet, we tell you when to eat, and you guys remember, you find your pockets when you can take a nap, and now when guys can play video games, but that takes time. It's not harder necessarily. It's just different. So I'd say that's the biggest adjustment, because once you get used to preseason camp, guess what? It's over. Regular season starts, and you got a full schedule of school, right? So
right.
It's all just evolving. Then by the time you get to your junior, senior year, it's like you can't wait for preseason to start, right? Because it's finally just football for 21 days or whatever it is, right? So,
yeah. Coach, you mentioned the CCIW and just reviewing that a little bit and talking about your program a little bit. The conference reminds me of like what we covered on a week-to-week basis in the Catholic League, and the description of it being a meat grinder and just a gauntlet. We hear them all the time. Great team at the top with a lot of good teams and a lot of great depth.
Yeah.
What do you see, and what do you want to kind of do in your first couple of years here at Elmhurst to kind of build the program up and get to that point where you're competing for conference championships, going to the playoffs, et cetera?
Yeah. So, the biggest thing, obviously the league is awesome, and I want nothing more than to compete with the best of the best. And that's just, no matter what I'm doing or where I'm at, I'm going to, if I'm playing pickup basketball with my 14-year-old son, like I'm making sure he knows he's playing against dad, right? Like I want to compete with the best, and I want to win every time I can. But for us, we need to take care of us and make sure that we're doing everything that we can, that we're focusing on what we can control. I can't worry about what anybody else in the league is doing or whatever their situation may be. We all have our own situations. They're all great teams. They're all great institutions academically. Obviously, I'm biased. I think we're the best, and that's the way it's going to be. But we need to focus on what we can control, and we need to make sure that as we continue to build what we've done in the last now 12 months, is we're making sure that we have the right people in here, the right people that fit Elmhurst University, that want to commit to graduating from here, that want to be part of that 96% right success rate when you get a degree from here. I think right now our average salary of people that graduate is over $105,000 right now. Like that's on average, right? So, you got to be committed to that, right? And you also got to be committed to the, what we're going to do athletics wise, buy into the community. We got to continue to find Elmhurst University fit. And that's important. And that's guys that are respected in the locker room. That's guys that, their teammates think highly of. That's guys that, their head coaches speak highly of. How we're going to do that is we're going to make sure that guys that join our program understand exactly what this is from the day that we start. And it's only going to build. The more questions they ask, the more details they're going to get, the more information we're going to give them. And I want them to know as close as they can to exactly what this is and where we're going and how we're going to get it done. And those are things that we can.
Yeah, so you've laid out a couple of things there in regards to student and student athlete and things that are expected of the student athletes in your program. What does a successful student athlete at Elmhurst look like, both on and off the field?
If you are looking to buy or sell a home, contact RE/MAX Realtor and Circle of Legends recipient Christopher Cobb. Let Chris's extensive negotiating experience work to guide you on all of your real estate buying and selling needs. Contact Christopher now to discuss the right strategy for your personalized real estate buying and selling plan. His number is 630-420-0070, or you can visit his website at christophercobb.com.
Yeah, well, and you can define success in a lot of different ways in terms of whether it's on the field or off the field, right? Our program philosophy, our program mission statement. I'm not a high ACT guy, so I got to keep things pretty simple, right? So we got 3 pillars, then we got a program mission statement that is kind of all of it, right? So
Sounds good.
we preach the Blue Jay way, and the Blue Jay way is defined as working to exceed all average expectations in everything that we do. Okay, and that also can be defined as 1% better, right? As we all hear every single day, or they can be defined as making today better than yesterday. We're going to be defined as making tomorrow better than today, or not wasting time. You can go through the gambit of what are buzzwords or buzz phrases. That's what the Blue Jay way is, right? So what's different today than it was when I played, or even before that, or even coaching the last 10 years is, the Blue Jay way, right? Or the success, it's different for everybody, right? If I got a guy that's a 2.7 GPA that works his tail off, right? And that is success for me. Okay. Now that might not be by the dean's list, right? But that is 100% success. Okay. You got a guy that's got a 3.2, but he should have a 4.0. That's not success for me. He might be making a dean's list. He might be, on the charts for having a 3.0 or higher, but that ain't cutting it. Right. And then there's a guy that, he's just trying not to hit snooze 3 times. Well, guess what? A success is when he hits snooze 1 time. We can put a plan together for, hey, there's 3 things you got to do when that alarm clock goes off. You got to put your feet on the ground. You got to get your butt out of bed. You got to start your routine. Well, Coach, I don't have a routine. Well, then we got to start a routine for you. And then that's how that young person, right, creates success in that moment. So it's all over the place in terms of each individual, and it has to be treated that way because I have to meet every single one of these kids where they are, every single one of them. There's no more like meet me halfway, like that's how we're going to do it, or you got to reach your hand out because I'm reaching my, like I got to meet these guys where they are because I may be the only positive male role model they may have in their life, right? And if they don't know me yet, I just recruited them here. Well, guess what? I got to go further, and we're gonna set these guys up for success, like you said, in everything that they do. They still have to do the work. But I'm going to have 5 different guys that are ready to handle one thing 5 different ways, right? So it's the success, the real success is defined in the consistency, right? That's the biggest piece is the consistency, and the having the ability to grow and learn from failures. That's the real success. That's the real definition of success. If you're for me, if you're a true competitor, right, you have to understand there's going to be a winner and a loser at the end of the day, right? That's just the way that it is. That's what the scoreboard says. And society and everything else decides that, right, as being successful or not. Well, if you're a true competitor, you can accept the fact that it wasn't your day, but there's a lot to learn, right, from what society would consider a failure, right? But you have to be willing to accept that in order to get better. Well, guess what? We're going to make mistakes. Right. There's going to be things that we can't control, but it has to be consistent and there has to be growth. And that's where success comes from. And that's where our success is right now in our program. Our guys have to feel that. They have to see that. Guys have to come in and they have to feel good about themselves and what they're accomplishing so that there is a light at the end. Oh yeah, coach was right about that. Right. And I'm not teaching them anything new or anything different. Their parents probably told them that. Their high school coach probably told them. You guys know it's, somebody says it and you're like, oh yeah, that's the greatest thing I've ever heard. Well, you've been told that since you were in 2nd grade. And now all of a sudden it clicks, right? So, yeah. And that still happens today as an adult. So I get it. But that's how I would define success. I hope I didn't ramble.
No, it's good. It's good. And along those lines, Coach, you talked about recruiting a little bit. I always think if I were a coach at any level, and I'm biased, I will admit that, but I always think I would start and end my recruiting, in the Catholic League. I feel like I would plant a flag, and there wouldn't be a kid I'd know. But I know that that's not the case, and you just have to. There are different factors that come in. How important, is the league? And you've been here 1 year, but do you follow leagues in this area well enough to say, hey, this is where we have to begin and end our recruiting?
Yes, it's very important to me to continue to recruit the Chicago Catholic League to the best of our ability. And, the young athletes that play there, that I know they're coached hard, and not hard in a any way besides they're held to a high standard, and that's the expectation and that's the standard. And I played with guys from St. Pat's, from Marist, from Mount Carmel, I know what that is, right? I remember when I played at Illinois State before I transferred here, one of my good buddies, he was a 215 wrestler. He played linebacker for us at Illinois State, and he brought me back to fight night at Mount Carmel, right? So it was like, that's a whole nother world from the northwest suburbs. I'm like, man,
Right.
this is unbelievable, right? So no wonder things are the way that they are, right? So I have such a high level of respect for the level of football that's played, because you go to other places in the Midwest, and you try and coach in Minnesota for a long time, Wisconsin. I was out east. The closest thing comparable to me to the Chicago Catholic League is the parochial schools in New Jersey, right, or Maryland. Like that's what we're talking about. Cincinnati, right? The Catholic League in Cincinnati. That you notice those things, but it comes from the Chicago Catholic League, and to me, nothing compares to what guys are capable of doing. Game to game, week to week. Like there's a lot of good other good football in the state of
Sure.
Illinois, but the gauntlet, like you said, the week to week, it's really impressive.
So what mistakes do some of the high school players make when they're trying to get recruited?
I would say, as a young person, you run into a lot of, and it really doesn't change when people become adults, right? Their ego doesn't want to hear certain things, or their ego thinks, this, that, or the other. It's the self-awareness. It's the, being able to be honest with yourself, or to listen to other criticism, right? And not that not that it's negative criticism, but just like, hey, if your coach is like, hey, you need to check these schools out. No, I'm too good for that. Well, you can't make kids check those places out. And sometimes it's too late. Sometimes you got to wait till after signing day, and you figure out that, hey, this is what I got to do. I think there's some of that. I think some of it too is if you don't have people with your best interest, really, I think that can steer you astray. And I also think it's, things will just happen, right? You don't have to work at it. You don't have to, like, people get noticed, right? But like, you still got to make your film. You still got to put yourself out there. You still got to, and it's not paying a couple $1,000s for this company to be doing something for you. That stuff comes across my desk. There's no reference to that. There's no, it's most of the time it goes to my spam. And recruiting's a two-way street. And if you it's the same thing I tell people when they come and visit here, parents, you name it, right? Recruiting's a two-way street. As much as you're here on a visit, making sure that we're checking to see if we're the right fit for you, we're making sure that you're the right fit for us, right? So
Right.
it's hard as a young person, because I remember going through it, trying to figure out what's what and where to go, and it's the hardest decision of their life up to this point, right? There will be harder ones, but it is, right. So it's tough, and to navigate that by yourself, or to navigate that with only certain opinions, that's that can get difficult. So it's okay to ask for help, but that's also a challenge as a young man, to be able to ask for help, because if you just work harder and work longer, you're going to get what you want. Well, at some point, that isn't the case.
Right. So you mentioned film, and I know there's a ton of it these days with the kids, not only the film that they prepare for themselves, but you've got social media clips and all that kind of thing. But when you watch a player's highlight film for the first time, how long does it take for you to know if it's a legitimate college prospect or not?
It could take a couple clips to know that somebody could be really special.
Mm-hmm.
There's guys that pop on film, and it's whether I'm recruiting them to Elmhurst University, or I have money to spend on individuals. There's certain things you look for, right? And when a kid plays hard from the snap of the ball to the end of the whistle, like that pops, right? And of course, if a DB has his first three clips are great interceptions, like, yeah, that's a big piece. But, are those the only three interceptions of this young person's career? And this is 2 years worth of film, right? So that's where you get a little bit deeper. Or if, a kid's, makes a great catch, scores a touchdown, returns a kickoff for a touchdown, returns a punt for a touchdown. Like, okay, well, those are two different kicks. That's a different catch, right? Like, okay, that tells me this kid's got some talent. So there's different criteria for everything. I'm a 15-year-old line coach. I'm an O-line coach by trade. Well, if I can turn the film on, press pause, and hips, knees, and ankles, and look at that flexion and be like, all right, we got a chance, or, oh, this is going to be tough. Now, there's some things that can overcome that, if the nastiness or the physicality or all of that comes into play. But we have services now that I can get full game film. So if I really like a guy, but I'm unsure, or I really like a guy, but I want to see, what they do. That's not a highlight, right? Are they still playing as physical? Are they still they just didn't make that huge play, but they're making a tackle, right? It's the production versus what you see on tape. You can, there's ways to get that, even though it's a world of highlights and easiness and
Right.
and instant gratification, right? Like, yeah, most people can find a 2-3 minute clip of themselves over a period of time to be able to send out. It's the digging a little bit deeper, right? And that just takes time, and that's what our job is.
Coach, kind of switching gears a little bit. I was, in preparing for this, I didn't realize that your college teammate is Mike LaFleur, was just named head coach of the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah.
And I read it like 3 times. I'm like, wow, this is incredible. It's it's like a month old. What does what does news like that, or having someone in that position, mean for Elmhurst? And if anything,
it's unbelievable. I mean, you're talking about, the top 10% of our profession, right? Like, that's unbelievable. And I couldn't be happier for Mike and his family. His wife is also an alum. We all went to school together. He was my first year here, my junior year, he was a freshman. And then we went through it together, and him and his teammates were able to take the program to the next level, and people built off of that. So I love him. We always, stayed in contact, and couldn't be more proud of him. And I know I speak for all my teammates and all the guys that he was teammates with that I wasn't, because they were young, everybody's super excited for him and his family. I'm like, so when can I come out and just hang out? Like,
exactly. Or you come in, bring some players, and
on the wall,
send the playbook, all that.
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly. Yes. So, Coach, what's something that high school players think is important? And we know there's a lot of things that have changed over the past 5 to 10 years as far as what high school players do during their careers in high school, the things that they post, the things that they think are important. But what do high school players think is important, but college coaches actually don't think is quite as important as the high school players think it is?
Yeah, I it probably varies a little bit from level to level, and things like that. For us, we talked about earlier, the individual accolades. They're great and they're important, or the records that have been broken, and that's all part of it. But I want to know what's on the film, and I want to know what your teammates or coach say about you. And your grades will speak for itself. That's really important, because that's going to set you up for success regardless. Nobody can take that away from you. Nobody can tell you can't do something if it's a possibility because of what you did in the classroom. So that's huge. But I'm all this or all that. But you won 1 or 2 games in high school. Like, there's some balance in that. If you're part of a championship program and part of a championship offseason, and then you're part of a championship, sophomore year, junior year, right? And those things. That doesn't mean necessarily winning a state championship, but these are the standards, and this is what you're held to year round. That has more of an impact on me than individual accolades. And everybody's different. I'm not speaking for all football coaches, right? But obviously the individual things are great and they're important, but it's having the ability to be a part of something bigger than yourself, and doing it together. Because And there's the discussion of like, well, a bunch of individual accolades lead to team success. Yes, I get all that. But for people who have been a part of championship programs as a player, as a coach, or a fan, or been around it, it's more than any individual accolade. And I can speak to, my teammates, not all of them, but most of them, at least probably the guys I still talk to. We much rather would have won a championship than anybody getting all conference or
Right.
whatever the case may be. But but that's not the case everywhere. So I think some of that comes into play a little bit, but and maybe there's some social media stuff I don't know that guys do, or that I don't even look at. I don't, it's really cool to see guys be able to, squat and do different stuff that you wouldn't be able to do unless you saw, them in person, as you were coming through the school or whatever. So some of that's cool. Being able to see guys wrestle and play other sports. I think something that's crazy is the individualization. Like, I got to see a trainer and I'm going to go see this specialist and I'm only going to focus on this. Like, listen, the guys that move the top of our board are guys that wrestled, guys that, they're a Gold Gloves boxer and they're a tight end or a linebacker. Like, okay, let's go. Like, I know what that is.
Yeah.
That's important. That's track, that's any sport. Because you're being competitive year round, right? It's not just, I'm going to focus on this and when you have young people and there's, lots of voices that are separate from, a consistent couple, that can add confusion and that can make things a little more difficult than they need to be.
Coach, you just said you wrapped your first year at Elmhurst, and talking about your team a little bit. What do you like about your team? What are you looking forward to for next season as far as returning players? Maybe it's a group. What are you excited about?
Yeah, first off, I'm excited about all of them. They all work their freaking tails off and they do everything I ask them to do. And it's incredible. They inspire me every single day, and I love every single one of them. And I probably tell them that too much, right? But I don't care. That's fine. I'm going to tell them, and that's the way that it is. We have a handful of guys coming back from last year. When I took over the program, we had, by the end of spring ball, we had about 20 guys total in the program, 28 guys total in the program. Some of that was, change, and I understand that, but new standards, new expectations, that's okay. Able to bring in a class at the end because I came in late. Last fall we had 66 guys total on the roster, right? I started, I think, 12 or 13 true freshmen, right, in one of the toughest Division III conferences in the country. Had 8 seniors. We're gonna have 6 next year. The guys that we have on our roster, they're here to work, and this is what they signed up for, and they're earning it right now, and I couldn't be more proud of them. I'm just excited to get on the field, see them compete, see all their hard work pay off, and continue to stack the days of being consistent and have all their hard work pay off, because they're doing it in the classroom. We had one of the highest GPAs we've had in a long time. They're getting it done on the field. They're holding each other accountable. They're doing things they need to do, and it's great. I'm excited to be around them every.
All right, so last question I have for you, Coach. We do this podcast, and we do focus on the Chicago Catholic League and other topics around high school sports, but we've interviewed a fair amount of the head coaches within the Chicago Catholic League, and I've asked them all the same question, so I'm going to ask it of you as well,
Sure.
right? So next year at this time, we're interviewing you again. What do you hope we're talking about as far as Elmhurst University football is concerned?
I hope what we are talking about is that you guys enjoyed this conversation so much, and you being an alum, you guys
Yes.
come back for a game. And, I hope that the vision for our program continues to come to fruition. And that is, you guys see these young guys compete and get after it. And no matter what happens, because of how they want to compete and because of how they handle themselves and because of who they are and who they're becoming, you all want to be better people when you leave that game. And that's what I want. And I hope that, I look forward to the day that we can speak to that. And that's, there's no way to measure that, or besides, time. And hopefully next year, that's what we're talking about.
All right, good.
Well, Coach, we really appreciate you coming on today. Tell us, what can players who are interested in Elmhurst become more familiar with your program?
Yeah, very, very easy. Go to our website, which is elmhurstbluejays.com. You can click on football. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Elmhurst, I think _FB, or it's just Elmhurst FB. I think there's a little variation in the two. I'm not a big social media guy, but I do my best. And then the other thing is talk to your high school coach. And because we are in contact with your high school coach all the time, and it is nonstop. And whether it's emails, whether it's seeing in person, whatever the case may be, we'll have visits this spring, we'll have visits this summer. They're obviously geared towards juniors and the next graduating year, whatever the case may be, but anybody can sign up for a visit at the institution. And even if they're, not at that point yet, we can steer them in the right direction. There's a questionnaire on our website they can fill out to get into our system. And then we stay in constant communication after that. But, as somebody's trying to get some more information, feel free to reach out. Our emails are all on the website. Phone numbers are on the website. I don't have a second cell phone. Like, I don't, my number's my number, and that's what it is, because people need to reach me, and I'm here to help. And I'm here because this is home and I love it here. I love this place. It's special, and it's not hard for me to tell people about how special this place is.
Well, the passion really comes through, Coach, and we appreciate your time and your thoughts on Division III football, specifically Elmhurst football. I know that we'll be rooting for you, and one member of this crew will be wearing his helmet every Saturday, thinking about the Elmhurst Blue Jays. So
it doesn't fit anymore, by the way.
That's all right.
How does that happen?
I have no idea. Yeah.
Coach Mike Heffernan, we really appreciate your time. Best of luck to you. And we hope to have you on again soon, and wish you well next fall.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.